we might get, this is how you do the day's job, but we don't really understand what the culture and what the rules are, the unwritten rules about, it's someone's birthday, who brings in the cake, who washes up the teacups, all of those kind of things, which just other people seem to spot and do. Yeah. It's almost sometimes for us, we need to be told about the unwritten rules, and I think it's the same with relationships. Yeah. It can become a bit tricky, to say the least. Yeah, tricky.
I didn't realise we had so much in common. I've never interviewed anyone with whom I have such an empathy. Your experiences are so much like mine, and the way you see things, that's very, very, very true. It's kind of autistics. A lot of autistics, they've never been so hand to hand with reality on their own. Much as you have people, you're not like friendless and sort of familyless, and you have children, but nonetheless there comes a point where in order to survive, and you don't know you're autistic, you have to do things. It's like standing up to those kids in the cinema. I could have just sat there and watched them attack my friend.
Yeah, which they may well have done if you hadn't have stepped in.
Guerilla Aspies podcast. Written, recorded and produced by Paul Wadey.
Carly is a keynote speaker, a presenter, an author, a United Kingdom policy safeguarding professional since 2008, and sits on the advisory board of the National Autistic Society Knowledge and Expertise Board, the Barbican London Autistica Insights, NHS England Immunisation Board, Heathrow Airport if you want to have a flight, Motability Consumer Group if you want to get around, East Midlands Rail if you want the train, and an independent member of, gasp for breath, the Ministry of Justice, Our Majesty the Queen's Community and Voluntary Honours Committee UK, Royal Society of Arts Fellow, Consortium Partner for Oliver McGowan Mandatory Training of NHS Health and Social Care Staff, Co-Chair of the Executive Steering Group with the National NAS, again, I told you there's more, and Royal MENCAP for the Oliver McGowan Mandatory Training for all UK NHS Health and Social Care Staff. Also, she was in the top 100 UK female entrepreneurs in 2020. She does independent reviews of medical scholastic articles intended for Springer Publishing, and she was on the BBC in the Class Act Media trained and made a wonderful interview with a friend of mine, Daniel, about questions asked of autistic people, things neurotypical say to autistics, which was quite funny. I have to say, this is probably the most moving podcast I've recorded, because Carly turned the tables and more or less interviewed me during this recording, which was very kind of her and an honour. And I feel we have a huge amount in common, much more than I realised, because we haven't really been allowed the luxury of a lot of close contact. It's always been at a distance. Oh, you look well.
Not bad. Good. Not bad at all. Lots of Zooms today. Only little ones and all very enjoyable. So I've had to do my hair and put my makeup on.
Oh, you look lovely, love. Don't worry about that. Oh, you don't look proper, you are. Put my hair and makeup on. The whole ethos of what I'm doing is the complete opposite. You're meant to take all that off, dear. You can get out of bed with the head like that, like I do. Because these days, you see me, I'm like that. Look at this great big thing coming up. And we go, ooh, like that. We come in.
I like humans. That.
Do you really? Do you
like should grow it, and do you know what it would be like? And this is a compliment.
Thank you.
Firestarter.
Firestarter, Stephen King. Oh, no,
Prodigy.
He ended up
this
dead.
One.
Poor fella, yeah. Firestarter. I know the hair. Yeah. He was running around.
Very 90s.
I feel ashamed now. I feel ashamed. That's what they always used to say, you know. I feel ashamed, you know. All the Liverpool girls would work it into conversations. We were like, Carly, my goodness. So how have you been before we begin?
Up and down. Yeah. There's been challenges around, obviously, it's all lockdown, then not lockdown, then lockdown, then not lockdown. And then we're not locked down, but we still feel that we should be doing things. And that there's been some positives, though, Paul, with my daughter being home ed. Yeah. There's so many courses now online that weren't around before because the whole of the nation had to be home educated. So actually there's been some positives there. Good. But the unpredictability hasn't been nice, has it? I don't know how you found it.
Which
the unpredictability of it all.
That was the first casualty. That's why I say to him, the first thing you lost was any certainty. You don't know what's going on, what's going to happen with COVID, what your body's going to do if it gets over it. You don't know if it's going to come back. You have the vaccines, you don't know what's going to happen. There's crazy folk walking around, I don't know what else to call them, saying that there is no COVID or we've got nothing to worry about, and it's like their bodies are indestructible and stay the same forever. It's a very strange time to be alive, isn't it?
It's weird. Yeah. It is weird, and hopefully one that we'll be able to tell children or grandchildren or nephews and nieces about when they're older. But it's not very nice.
It's not very nice at all. No, it's good you got the sense. I talk to a lot of people who realise what's going on. Because Lena, for example, has postdoctoral qualifications in vaccines. You talk to her about it, she goes, and you expect some huge, complicated explanation of what's going on. She just goes, get vaccinated. And that's it.
I'm just going to turn some of my tabs off because I'm cautious of them pinging at us. Right, let's get rid of the rest of the internet. It's just me and you, Paul. They can all ping away and I'll ping back later. And she's marvellous, isn't she? And she delivers such great comedy. Big fan of hers.
She's a very clever woman, yeah.
She is, yeah.
She got in the top 10 jokes for the Edinburgh Festival one year with the line, I wanted to be a feminist, but my husband wouldn't let me.
And if you spat my Diet Coke out then, that should be a T-shirt. That should be a slogan on a T-shirt. I love it.
I think the pair of us came to autism late, didn't we? We didn't actually know we were autistic. And we had
how old are you when you were diagnosed, Paul?
I was 41.
No way.
Do you know what happened to me?
What?
I was arrested in a cinema for attacking children.
Really?
No, what happened was, it's in The Guardian.
Oh, God, I was trying to panic then.
My friend and I went to the pictures. We're both 41, known each other since we were 10. And he was on his first child. His wife had a baby. And I was helping them move in Bristol. So we went to cinema to basically give him an easy time. And these little kids made out we attacked them. There was a 15, 14, 13 and 11-year-old. Two of them from Liverpool, two from Bristol, little buggers. And they'd spent about an hour of the film causing a lot of trouble in front of us and being aggressive and everything. My friend went to speak to one of them. I jumped up, grabbed one on the shoulder because I was certain they were going to attack him.
Yeah.
Otherwise I wouldn't have done it. And they looked at me. I stood over these people like I was going to die. That's it. Someone's going to shoot me. And they all ran out and made out I strangled one of them.
Oh, my God, Paul.
And what happened was the lad, it was a 15-year-old from Liverpool, he walked up to the manager and said, this fella put his hands around my throat and tried to strangle me, which, if he'd only thought about it, he should have sort of gone, but instead and he must have rubbed his neck or something, or he did that when the police came the next day, which is a bit, there were no bruises, they didn't get the doctors to look at the kids the next day, because why should they? There was nothing wrong with them, They managed to come up with a red mark, but if a grown man in his 40s stands over a 15-year-old, puts pressure on the neck, you get various kinds of lividity. Yeah. There's nothing. The manager came in and said, right, we're going to arrest you. I called in the police and walked out. My mate and I sitting in a cinema with this film going. Instead of going for the door, the exit, we went outside, so what's going on? The police came. And I then went into shock for the next, it took me about 3 days to get over it. And then interviewed in the police station. And we just thought it was a joke, But they charged us to court.
Oh, golly.
So I was like, oh, bloody hell. 7 months later, we were completely acquitted of this. But during this process, my sister-in-law, who is brilliant, she says, you've got autism, you've got Asperger's syndrome. I'm like, because we had brilliant arguments. And she's convinced of this. She spends weeks on end phoning around getting me the diagnosis. I get diagnosed on the 8th of December. Then I have my birthday after that, and then we go to court for 2 days, and I'm acquitted. And then I go in a social group, and I meet Dinah Murray in ALAG, Autism London, and I'm like, oh my God. You did that?
It's like meeting cousins you didn't know you had, isn't it?
Yeah. And that was it. And I'm left with a diagnosis, a freedom pass. And several years later, I get married.
Was it a good film that you missed?
Oh, you have to ask the one question that I never want anyone to ask. You can ask me about getting hauled through court. You can ask me about being arrested for attacking kids. But don't ask me what the film was. It was Van
embarrassing.
Helsing.
Is it Bambi or something?
Very embarrassing. It was Van Helsing. Well,
That's not embarrassing.
There's nothing else on, for God's sake. It was like something like by Nicholas Rogue or something, or a Ridley Scott. No, it was Van Helsing.
It's really, do you know what that? I mean, I make a laugh, saying, did you miss a good film? But in all honesty, that being, I remember the vulnerabilities of not being diagnosed and not knowing your own vulnerabilities. How the hell did you get through that court process? You're absolutely on your last mental nerve.
Because I have dedicated my entire life to turning myself into a brutal alpha male who's like an ex-soldier, who's like some kind of cyborg. I mean, there's a process from the age of 16 to the age of 21 where I kind of weaponized myself as a human being to withstand the world. And I ended up doing martial arts training for a year, stuff like that. I mean, I was a class joke. You do a kick and fall over. That actually happened because I had no ability at sports and I was the weedy guy who was always picked on. And then I turned the whole thing around because I got into acting and drama. I even got to East 15 Drama School. Lasted a year of the 3-year course because obviously wasn't in any fit state. And ended up doing a degree in a polytechnic where I was actually victimised for about a year by student political societies. Then after that, everyone's trying to support me. I ended up doing 4 years to get a 3-year degree. And I'm so glad you asked. Then did a postgrad in computing science. Wasn't much good at any of it because of the stress. Found a Buddhist movement. So it's just process after process of pulling it together. Never got into drink and drugs because if I'd started smoking or drinking, I wouldn't be here.
Yeah.
I knew that. Yeah. So that it's very. I think there's some parallels in our lives, isn't it? Because you've been incredibly brave on the quiet, and not everyone can quite understand, I think, what you faced and how you've handled it on your own.
Thank you, Paul. Yeah, it was interesting. Is that putting it too mildly?
Oh, see, that's what the brave do. They sort of English, it's no big deal. And there's people like bombs going off and everything. Just a little bit of noise there,
This is. Have you seen that meme online? And it's a cartoon character sat having a cup of tea, and everything around this cartoon character is in flames. So it's just like, oh, this is fine. So easy.
You have to. You were you not at one point divorced and pregnant and homeless?
No, I was 15. I lived in a mother and baby home, Well, that's when my daughter was born, actually lived in the mother and baby home. You have to have a baby to live in the mother and baby home. Right. So when I fell pregnant. Okay. I often start keynotes with a joke, particularly because the rebel in me, particularly if it's a university or a school. Yeah. And I got the keynote with, thanks for inviting me into your educational sphere. It's lovely to be back at school, seeing the only test I passed was clear blue. And they seem to like that. Passed that with flying colours. But I passed that one well. And that tends to kind of break the ice a bit. I don't get invited back, but that's fine.
You will do in 10, 20 years. Because you represent reality, you see, and they're still cosseting kids, isn't it? It's true. They still want, particularly autistic people, a certain sort of, I see this a lot, this sort of, don't be horrible to me, I'm delicate, and people like us. I mean, you've seen stuff. I can't even begin to imagine that. Did you have support from your parents?
I was very lucky. Although I didn't live at home, my parents support and they did help out a lot and still do to this day. So, it's not anything, it's not their doing at all. They're fabulous. And you've met Dad, haven't you? Matt, Autism Pride in Reading. And we were on a show and watching my dad watch you was tugged on the heartstrings. Oh. Because I think it was really useful, not for all of us, but particularly for men, say 40, 50 plus. Yeah. Got nerves in a good way.
Thank you.
And it was a lovely day, that, wasn't it? We had the weather as well, didn't we?
We were lucky then. Turn that bloody generator off in the background, but otherwise it was good, yeah. Yeah, we managed to keep it together and stuff, Aspies, for 3 years and did that as well. But in the end, it was really cruel. My weaponized sort of what I put myself through, and also I grew up in a house with a lot of. It's very odd. It was a very loving family. Okay, so you grew up in this very loving family, and the whole thing was brutal, and it got more and more brutal. So you're either having a laugh with each other, or there was really heavy arguments and screaming.
Yeah.
My poor father, in the end, the bipolar half of him, his half autistic, half bipolar, that kind of took over, and he became this Jekyll and Hyde figure with two Pauls for sons.
Yeah.
One was he liked his son. The other one was a monster he hated. So every now and then he'd go through the bipolar thing, and he'd start attacking me and doing anything to hurt me he could while he could. So you come out of this as sort of psychological Marine commando, as it were. And it was all this thing about you got to take pain and go with pain. And I think you'd know about that. You must have seen a lot of dark corners where there's just you, and you've got a baby, and what are you going to do? Drink? What are you going to do? Fall to pieces? No, you don't fall to pieces. You know what I mean? You've got to swim in the water and you don't know how to. Yeah. You've got to find somewhere staying afloat. Yeah.
I think it's also sometimes, and I see this a lot in the autistic communities, people might see me or you and go, oh, look at them vocalising, look at them having a laugh, look at them doing good or okay, in my case, things.
Yeah.
And they don't see the disability, but actually that smile, that humour, often we've got quite dark, that way of getting by isn't from naivety. It's from seeing actually the world at its absolute worst and still getting through it. Yeah. But people don't see that. They just go, oh, look at this naive person who doesn't really understand the adult world. No, we do. Probably far too early, far too young. It's that. It's a smile of resilience, not a smile of naivety. And I see that a lot. Underestimated is the word.
It's amazing what you're saying. Amazing. It's just, you know, my wife has seen that. So, yeah. God knows what happened to Dinah Murray. You know, Dinah walked as a man, didn't she?
Yeah. In fact, I asked if I could call, because I'd call Anne Memmott my autism mum. You know, if you've got a certain problem, you might go to your mum. Yeah. And if you've got a certain problem, when it comes to autism advocacy and campaigning, there are certain things I would go to Anne Memmott for advice, and certain things I go to Dinah for advice. And so I said, oh, you and Anne are like my autism mums. And she went, can I be your autism dad? so I'd always message her going, all right, autism dad.
Anne Memmott is brilliant, isn't she? Absolutely brilliant. So the stuff she puts out is just like, wow. It's got to be said, isn't it? I tried to get her on the podcast, but she said, I didn't want to do it. Oh, she's too modest, you know.
She's incredibly modest.
God, man.
Isn't she?
Yeah. So it all started when you're 15, you had a baby. How old is your first child now, daughter?
23.
23? Oh! And how old's the homeschool one?
13. So my youngest is 13, eldest is 23, and then I've got a 19 in the middle. All girls.
Oh.
That's hence why I keep dyeing my hair, because it's the going grey prematurely from raising girls. It's true. It ages you.
Jesus.
And it's autism lot. Our life expectancy is so bad. We don't need pre-aging, do we?
Wow. Because you've performed. You've done a lot of theatre as well, like I have.
Yeah, I'm not very good at theatre. I'll be honest with you. I've got this theory that you don't have to be good at something to enjoy it. Yeah. So I would say that I enjoy acting more than the audience enjoy me acting. But that's okay. I'm having fun. But yeah, I like it's fine. TV and film, and I love comedy. I've just written a little script, and I'm waiting to hear back on that. It'll probably be a rejection. But you know, as autistic lot, we're used to rejections. So that's fine. We'll just try again next week.
You can film them yourself. I could film them for you. I've got cameras and everything and edit stuff. You can just put it together. That's how you do it now. Just
Not bad idea.
Yeah, just stick it together yourself. Put it together yourself, and then if they like it, they can do a whole reinvention of it. But I would just go out and do it. I mean, I started my own TV show with puppet. I started playing with toys, didn't I? I've gone stark raving mad. I'm still finishing episode 1 of season 2 of The War Zoners with the Action Men. just set on a submarine. It's completely bonkers, you know.
I don't think it is. I don't think that is bonkers. To me, no, seriously, I think that's completely normal. I think people suppress all the things they want to do because, you know, socially acceptable. Oh, sod that, you know.
I know.
Got to do what you want to do, and people will enjoy it.
Yeah.
So you're not alone in it, are you?
Well, I've always been like that. I could never compromise myself. I've always relatively made a fool of myself because I just had to be honest to myself. But the thing with the acting is it was the one time in some ways you could engage with the world like a neurotypical.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, and this energy in and relating as well. You were okay doing it because all we do is mask.
It was really interesting because after I was diagnosed, they said, oh, you know, another way to help prepare for things is kind of think out what you're going to say, say you're going to the dentist, you know, what you're going to say to the receptionist, what the receptionist says back, what happens next, social stories. And I thought, well, that's just a script. And I think I miss acting a lot when I'm not acting, but advocacy is, I describe acting as my first love and advocacy as my spouse. Because that's my lifelong duty. That's what I eat, you know, wake up in the morning to do and go to bed at night thinking about and work for. But the acting, it's one of those things I miss it when I'm not doing it. And I think, Paul, that's because it's the only time I know what happens next. Yeah. I know what I have to say. I know what the other person's going to say. And the best thing about it, if I make a mistake, someone just says cut, and you get to try again and again. And in real life, you don't get no one I'm waiting for someone to yell cut, and no one is. And I just got to keep improvising. And normally, much to the real life audience disappointment. So thinking, oh, I didn't say that right, or I didn't, you know, said the wrong thing again, or you know. And in acting, I'm always getting it right.
The thing with that is that with the advocacy, you're facing the world and you can tell the truth on your own terms and be sincere. With the acting, that was how we always engaged with the world. You had to develop the technique of saying the right things. We didn't have natural set of psychological emotional responses. You know, you've had to engage a family, raising kids and relationships, for goodness sake, and not knowing you're autistic, and you find out. So with the advocacy, you're free. And the thing with your performing is quite simply, all you've got to do is be really engaged with your own sincerity. And then if you can perform that, with Stealth Aspies, I lost my acting technique because there was always a gap between me and the characters. That was my technique. But then I get on stage and I'd be performing these autistic people and I find myself in them and there was no gap. And I was completely floundering doing character. I couldn't do any character acting. Because I couldn't. It's me up there. I couldn't. Trying to put a voice on a body language or doctor or Liverpool. There was a guy, a long monologue, who put on a Scouse accent and hid from the audience and did it like a radio show, you know. And then I put on another one as a transgender person. The way to play a transgender person when you're like a big white hetero guy is to play it completely straightforward, and then everyone projects on it and says, "Wow, you really captured the truth."
Do you know what? You've just raised a really good point there, Paul, because I was diagnosed at 32, but I did go for a diagnosis at about 27 and also at 14, actually. But that was both of those. At 14, they said I was lazy. Yeah. Because I had catatonia. At 27, they said, oh, yeah, you know, you look very autistic on paper and all the AQ tick boxes and all that malarkey. But they said, oh, you know, if your hobbies are acting, you can't be autistic because you wouldn't put yourself in someone else's shoes. And my reply to that was, I don't put myself in someone else's shoes. I just allow them to walk in mine. It's like almost reverse acting. So when I'm acting, it's always me, but I'm just letting that character be me for a while. Yeah. It's the other way around.
It's very much what we were taught in transformational character acting, that you basically, somebody possesses you and they just run around in your body. I had some great times doing that. And once they were trying to get rid of me at the drama school in the second term, so they got me to play Macbeth. So I was walking around the ground.
There's a nude scene in Macbeth, isn't there, Paul?
Titanium broadsword and a cape, you know, being intense. It was a recipe for disaster. Then after that, they were nice to me and they made me play Friar Lawrence, thankfully. Benedicite, beautiful Friar Lawrence. you know, the out of Romeo and Juliet. But yeah, bloody stones have been known to move and trees to speak, you know. It's a recipe. So how exactly, at what point, when did it happen that you discovered that you were autistic? That moment.
Well, so I say I went at 14. That was obviously, I was a minor and my parents took me to see a psychologist, and the word autism wasn't ever used. Yeah. I went to, when I was 27, it's because two of my girls had been diagnosed autistic, and I thought, I better go and get myself looked at, because I was having real struggles in life, relationships, friendships, work, everything really falling apart. And I was almost a caricature of myself. It wouldn't be, let's put some mascara on to face the day. You know, women describe it as their war paint. It would be, let's put 3 pairs of eyelashes on. Let's be fake tan from head to toe. Let's wear wigs. Let's, even had surgery done on my face and my body. Just wanting to be a caricature of what I thought it was to be female as well. I don't know whether I'm gender fluid. I don't know. Yeah. I don't know. My pronouns are she and her, but it was almost like, to feel like a woman, I have to be almost like a female drag queen. Everything was 200% masking constantly, exhausted by that. And so I thought I better go, and although I didn't know what masking was then, I do now. I can look back and go, that's why I did it. But that was a no. And it was after that I saw a kind of, I think it was Rudy Simone's had done like a kind of tick list. So the kind of tick list of what you hear about autism is, kind of, do you like trains, or, all that, the kind of really stereotypical stuff. But her stuff was really different. It said things like, might either be in very intense relationships or be completely celibate. And I thought, that is exactly how I've always lived my life, either long periods of celibacy or in really intense relationships, maybe marriage,
Yeah, right, me too, yeah.
I was like, that ticked a box. And then it said, might find it easier to spend time with animals, may prefer to spend time with animals than humans. That is me to a T. Yeah. Living in a field with animals for the rest of my life, I'll be happy. Yeah. And there was many more things on there about, kind of, instead of that kind of lack of empathy, being really hyper empathetic, which I am. Yeah. I saw these problems as my own rather than their problems. It becomes mine. Yeah. All of these things on this list, there was tons, and it's just like someone had watched me from birth, made notes, and kind of showed me it one day. Yeah. And I really knew, for sure, even though, it had been explored before, that's when I really knew. And I thought, actually, what they were looking for was a very different to what's going on, but it's still autism. It's just not,
It's very interesting you say all that, because so much description of autistic people isn't autism at all. It's like the hyper empathetic in order to survive. I had this. I took a vow of semi-celibacy when I was about 28. That's it. No relationship, nothing. If you don't get a relationship with somebody, then you don't go near them. So you'd have these long periods of celibacy in which you were developing your capacity just to have friendships with the gender I'm attracted to women, and trying to be someone where they knew where they stood in relation to you. And so on, and it's I don't like all this incel business that's come along. It's a bit sick, isn't it? Seems to be sort of a weaponized attitude towards single men, that such people are some sort of potential monsters, when it simply isn't true.
No, it's hard enough for women that either have very intense or quick, fast relationships, or choose to be celibate. It's although some other women, even other women might say, "God, that's a bit odd." But if it's a man having that type of lifestyle, I can't even imagine the misunderstandings that would happen there. And in many ways, I have done for the last 13 years, talked everyone's ears off about autism in girls, but the vulnerabilities autistic men have being misunderstood when it comes to relationships. Yeah. Vast.
It's kind of shoot first, ask questions later. You have to get the sex in order to feel something, in order to engage with the individual, to have the relationship. You traditionally relate to women as being wanting the relationship as much, if not first, to know that this guy actually gives a damn about them, that they're in a relationship with somebody, they're not just having sex with somebody, assuming that's what they want. Oh, confusion. And then there's the grey area that causes all the trouble. People don't know what the hell they want.
Yeah.
Because suddenly there's a lot of, I think with puberty and sex comes a huge amount of responsibility, which our schools are not instilling into people.
No, we get told the biology, but we don't get told the emotional.
Oh yeah.
Emotional side and the kind of the culture of it, I guess. And we, you know, let's say we went to work in an office, we might get, oh, this is how you do the day's job, but we don't really understand what the culture and what the rules are, the unwritten rules about, it's someone's birthday, who brings in the cake, you know, who washes up the teacups, all of those kind of things, which just other people seem to spot and do. Yeah. It's almost sometimes for us, we need to be told about the unwritten rules. And I think it's the same with relationships. Yeah. It can become a bit tricky, to say the least. Yeah, tricky.
I didn't realise we had so much in common. I've never interviewed anyone with whom I have such an empathy. Your experiences are so much like mine, and the way you see things, that's very, very, very true. It's kind of autistics. A lot of autistics, you know, they've never been so hand to hand with reality on their own. You know, much as you have people, you're not like friendless and sort of familyless, and you have children, but nonetheless, there comes a point where in order to survive and you don't know you're autistic, you have to do things. It's like standing up to those kids in the cinema. I could have just sat there and watched them attack my friend.
Yeah, which they may well have done if you hadn't have stepped in.
We'll never know. That's a
good thing that they'll never know, because what you did was very brave. And also, let's say that you weren't autistic. Would you have perhaps had the exquisite functioning, which you may well have, but mine is shocking, social imagination going, I better not do that because this could be the consequence. You didn't think about the consequences. You just tried to save your friend.
Exactly,
and there were diabolical consequences for you. But you might, if you had not have been autistic, you might not have stood up for your friend without even thinking about yourself first.
Yeah, it's very true, though, actually, He got his diagnosis a few years later.
Did he really?
Turns out he was another one. He was an English teacher. So at what point did you sort of go mainstream about being autistic and decide to work as an advocate?
Oh, well, it was more with my mum hat on to begin with, 2008-ish, because I wasn't diagnosed till 2014 by a doctor on a wing centre. So it was more with my mum hat on. And then that evolved into talking about us autistic women that will never get a diagnosis. Yeah. Once the penny had fully dropped. Oh. And then I was very kindly invited. I did some short films online. I won't mention them because they're pretty bad. I did some short films online, some fictional, some not so fictional. Yeah. Obviously some that the National Autistic Society had watched. And then they very kindly invited me up to Harrogate for the, I think it was 2013, could have been 2012, 2013, professionals conference, and to talk about autistic women and girls and that kind of not being diagnosed or whatever, and being a mum. And so I get up on this stage. There's me thinking it would be in like a little office room. It was a huge stage and tons of doctors from all over the world. Oh. And I stood up and I was doing my PowerPoint presentation, which was like mass overshare, like the most oversharing. Probably some bits too rude to repeat now, and that's because I now understand context, whereas before I didn't. So they must have been having a right laugh because I stood up in front of 400 odd internationally renowned doctors talking about tampons, and one of them was anyway. So I wouldn't repeat it now because now I know about my condition. But anyway, there was a very nice lady who Carol Povey introduced me to, and a lady called Judy, and she kept asking me if I wanted a cup of tea and stuff. And I thought, perhaps Judy's a volunteer. She's very kind. And then Judy invited me to dinner. And I thought, it could be McDonald's, Nando's. It wasn't. It's a really posh dinner. And there's me in my leather skirt, still with my 85 million hair extensions in, more orange than Donald Trump. And everyone's giving out business cards around this big oak round table. I didn't have any, obviously, and just passed around napkins. And then the lady next to me, Judy, who I had assumed was a volunteer because she kept being very kind and asked me if I wanted a cup of tea, said, "Oh, here's my business card. You might need this." And I read the business card and it says Dr. Judith Gould on it. Yeah. And I turn around to Judy. I say, "Oh, do you know Dr. Judith Gould?" And of course it was Dr. Judith Gould. And I think at that point she died in her own mind anyway.
Yeah.
Then I did get the diagnosis. Yeah.
I've met her a few times in the autism centre. I managed to wangle it where I filmed her, so I got to talk to her. Yeah, that's funny. That who's this lovely lady? Take me to dinner and everything. What a sweet old. Who are you? What? You know, it's a tragedy neither of us ever met Lorna, isn't it? Lorna Wing.
I would have loved to have met Lorna.
But, you know, I saw her in the foyer once or twice, yeah.
I know that I never got to meet her, and I'm absolutely gutted about that. And I've heard so much via Dr. Gould about Lorna that I feel that I met her. I never did, but her absolute legacy is so poignant that you feel like you've met her, even though you haven't.
I remember I was in the Poly in North London. It got to the point where I was being lied about, and I was supposed to be some kind of psychotic or disturbed. And the reputation, of course, was taken back. But some of these people never got the message. So I'd bump into students even years later, every now and again over the years. And when you tried to tell people that you'd met somebody who thought you were deranged and dangerous and had to warn people about it, they wouldn't believe it. And so I meet someone like Judith Gould, and I managed to get to talk to her for a long time. And I only stopped talking about this experience I had in 2003 when I went to Bristol and sort of recovered from this post-traumatic stress. And it's like when I share stuff like that, I don't know. I think now a lot of us have experiences like that one way or another.
Yeah.
You know.
We're either infantilized or vilified.
Good God.
There's your good in life.
Good God. Infantilized or vilified? Yeah,
you have to pick your choice. Am I going to be infantilized in this situation and seen as less than, or seen as somebody who, you know, doesn't have capacity, or am I going to be vilified in this situation? That's how it feels.
Have you seen experiences like that yourself?
Yeah.
Yeah. You were talking about Judy, you were sharing that brilliant story, and I was having a micro panic attack on the screen there, thinking about an experience where that happened. I'm trying to share your experience, which is a brilliant story. And I'm going, listen to God's sake, listen. You know, don't.
No, share your story, because this is a two-way street. Look at us, we're communicating.
Yeah.
You're teaching me here, because otherwise I'll just talk at people. This is good.
Maybe you should talk at people. It's good stuff. You know? It's like I say about my book, you know, how to learn to listen to people despite always having something more interesting to say. You know?
In our opinion.
Well, my wife listens. But, you know, I've been very lucky in my life. Have you had people that you were close to were like that you had one or two folks?
Well, I noticed the differences I've had with friendships. And this is actually part of my diagnosis, where when we got friends, that, you know, I was always a bit puzzled by people on, particularly, you know, when Facebook came about, and there would be people from school that were still in touch, and they were going to each other's hen do's or baby showers or weddings, and I thought, gosh, they knew each other when they were 6 and they're still hanging out. And I thought, that's unusual, but that's the norm, isn't it? And I thought, that's really strange, because I'm quite good at making friends, but I find it very hard to keep them. Yeah. Maybe I'm a thing, or, you know, I've got a new special interest and I've gone submarine for 6 months with my autism special interest, in a submarine for 13 years. But that's okay, because, you know, with that, there's lots of good crewmates in the autism and disability world, which are my friends submarining in a special interest with me, so that's fine. Occasionally, but yeah, friendships. So I had one friend. I did open uni. I didn't pass it. I ran out of money and burnt out. 2 years into it. Right. I've got a friend from uni, and you know what? We can see each other maybe once a year. Yeah. And it's just like we saw each other the day before. And I'm really grateful to her. And my friends and colleagues colleague stroke friends in the disability world and in the autism world are just in my life, because they're everything rolled into one.
Well, they have empathy. We have empathy for each other. We can relate, you see.
Yeah.
And I don't understand how you can have so-called a psychiatric condition, a mental condition, and if it's a disorder and disability, how can a mental condition give you empathy and the basis for loving relationships, and even with your own children? How can it be a positive thing? And how can you have abilities from that?
Yeah.
Eh? I thought it was, proper disability. You don't get abilities. You can't function. I always say the same things in the podcast. I'm always asking everyone the same sort of questions. And a group of people did turn up on Twitter a few years ago who were entirely negative about everything autistic. And I thought, oh, great, they're going to challenge all my ideas. And, of course, all they ever did was represent being typical anal, obsessed with their own idea autistics who all related to each other and were basically the very neurodiversity movement they hated, which I thought was hilarious.
Yes, it kind of went full circle.
Yeah, and it all burned out in the end because one of them turned out to be a paedophile, and I know who you're talking about.
I
was onto him, didn't I? I made a film January 2000 and when was it? 19, challenging his identity. You know what I'm talking about? Yeah, that is pretty freaky,
I know you're talking about terrifying. And that's why it's so important. We kind of say, to be it parents or schools or youth organisations, it's really important that, you have older autistic people be mentors to autistic children. Only if they're DBS checked, only if they're, professional insured advocates. There's no cutting costs there because that horrendous situations like that can happen. Absolutely diabolical. I can remember reading that, and I remember that you were trying to warn people before, which again you were doing like you did in that cinema that day, trying to safeguard people and not thinking about the consequences.
Well, I don't know what else.
Which is a good thing in this case because it was horrendous.
It was incredible. He got put away. He'd been put away for assaulting a child, and he was put away for grooming a child on Twitter. There's something wrong with that Twitter, isn't there?
Yeah, and I think just as parents as well. I mean, my young people use different online platforms, and we can't be, stalking their phones every 2 minutes. But there does some of the girls I support. We do online safeguarding classes. Yeah. I was to say to them, come into because I've got a youth room. Come to the youth room. We're going to do a lesson. They'd be like, no thanks. So we do might have parties or might have I'll set up like a fake TikTok scene, and then we have posters up and we talk about how could this be seen safe, how can it be anonymous online, what are your settings, is this just for your connections, and so we kind of have a discussion about it whilst eating lots of cake and having a good laugh and a dance, rather than sit down, get your notepad out and make notes, and that's far more effective. But I've supported some autistic girls who had horrendous situations and boys in media. It's very scary.
Are they still taking the clothes off and sending pictures of themselves naked to other people? For goodness sake, the one thing that's incredible. It was a plot point of a play on the Royal Court called Linda, I think it was, where one of the daughters of the family had done that to a boy, and the entire school got to see it. She moved school 3 times, and this is the story, and each time the whole school's meant to have seen the pictures. So she ended up living a whole life, this is a fiction, in a big onesie suit to hide the self-harming scars she'd done on her arms.
Is that a film, is it, or is that a theatre production?
It was theatre, it was a play. It was a play, it's yet another modern compendium of 21st century life, it's a play.
That would be quite a good... our GCSE age kids, we tend to go and watch Romeo and Juliet, which is fabulous. Yeah. But actually, maybe it's theatre productions like that.
Oh yeah.
That are not 10, 11-year-olds, but older secondary school children going to watch.
I think it would have been very good actually. The whole politics of the idea of there is a camera, there's a machine, with a screen and a camera on the back of it, and this thing, you can just splurge a stream of consciousness into it. Just go from your head inside, and it goes all over the whole planet. That's switched off. Every Sunday I try to get away from it. I sometimes fail, but you try to get away from the online girl and get back to the meditation world, which is why even now you can see I've got my stool there, which is the meditation stool, and it just sits there, even if I don't use it, just to remind me what I should be doing all the time, rather than watching the television. or sitting there on the computer. I should be just getting a grip and developing beauty and unconditional loving kindness, and then developing mindfulness as well, being present.
Yeah.
And just being grounded. And of course, my wife is amazing like that. She reads all the time. We give her own study and do all her work. Married my highest aspirations, but I couldn't. If I had a.
Can you just repeat that? That is one of the most beautiful things I've ever heard.
You
married your
my highest aspirations. I married a science teacher.
Oh my God, that's gorgeous.
Of absolute integrity. Somebody you can totally trust. The kind of
That's
wife
one of the most beautiful things I've ever heard.
Betrayed and abused. She gets the kind of woman who gets a husband who betrays her, and he plays games with her, and he makes her guilty when she's not. The kind of person who would get about a swine like that, marrying them. And I found this incredible person, and just I'm a very lucky man. Yeah, that's it. It's everything I aspire to, really. She's the husband. She's very brutal. Emotionally, and I'm the wife. I'm the give me a hug. She's like, oh, all right, get it over with. I'm trying to work. It's great. She does ask for the odd hug, but it's mainly me. She's like, oh, for God's sake, you and the cat. Oh, bloody hell, it's brilliant. No, she's not like that.
One of my very best friends is a gay man, and the girls call him Gay Dad Brad. And it has been known, particularly when the girls were younger, for the girls to come home from school when they were, because I was the home ed now, and get off the school bus, come in. I'd be sat at the dinner table typing away, working, and he'd have his pinny on. He's just baked a cake and put his lipstick on, and it was kind of like I was Mr. Banks and he was Mary Poppins. Yeah, and it worked. And it felt, as an autistic woman who struggles to know people's agendas and intentions, I kind of made a decision when I got divorced, and I had relationships, but no one was ever going to live with me again. Until my girls were all adults, because I knew I couldn't spot the nice guy. I couldn't spot the nice guy. The problem was I thought everyone was a nice guy. Yeah. Whereas now I'm a bit more less Labrador, more bloodhound, And, it's funny going back to the acting. I did a film which I won't talk about too much because there's a rude scene in it, but kind of 2013 time, and the director who was casting couldn't make it, so it was the assistant director that did the casting. So the assistant director cast me and then had to feed back to the director, and he said, "Oh, if she was an animal, what would she be?" Which I know is often an acting one used. And said she'd be a Labrador. Because, and I said, oh, and she told me about this, and I said, oh, why a Labrador? And they said, because you're the sort of person that you open the front door to, they never met you before, but they love you already. And I was like, oh, I'm a Labrador. I don't know you, but I love you, you're brilliant. Yeah, because Labradors are just so excited to see you, aren't they? And I was like, oh, God, that's really good. But now I'm a bit more bloodhound. I have to sniff around a bit first, and then I'm a Labrador again.
I kind of the reason I behave the way I do is because I couldn't compromise myself, and what you get is people exposing things about themselves that they wouldn't otherwise show, because they always think, I think I'm a bit stupid, out to lunch, and sort of less intelligent, less aware than I am. I think I shouldn't say intelligent. I think my awareness.
You're very intelligent, Paul.
Well, not what I was.
Stop being modest. If we wanted modesty, we would have got Anne on. Me. All right?
Oh, it's just I just get by on me looks, dear. That's the truth. Intelligent. Oh, God, intelligent. Oh, it's all this value judgment stuff in the neurotypical world. That they're autistic, but they can do things. They're autistic, but they're very intelligent.
They're autistic, but they got out of bed this morning. Wow.
Yeah. It's about right. I always knew there was something wrong by valuing people by their abilities, or relating to yourself in terms of abilities. And it tended me to the Buddhist religion. I got in a Buddhist movement, and that was full of these middle-class graduate intellectuals swanning around. And we had a phrase for him: "He's a big man in the selfless game." It was ridiculous, and that's got problems of its own, that thing. But nonetheless, I was able to sort of practice, and you do tend to find people everywhere who are just straightforward and honest, and then you get people with agendas.
Yeah.
And of course, I tend to bring them out. Sorry?
I don't understand those. I don't think I ever will.
Yeah. Well, they've got to fight to win. They're constantly going through the world And they get this horrendous attitude to vulnerable people. Yeah, the hatred of disability, the hatred of the less able, which is something I need to explore in a piece about how I've been made, the weaponization process in the early 80s, and there's certain initiations I went through as well to grow up. And it gives you a certain genuinely hateful attitude towards the vulnerable, and that's pure ableism. You see, the idea of ableism as an inescapable part of being a grown adult neurotypical. Yeah, which is it's a horrible thing to admit, you know. And you see, for example, ABA is obviously brainwashing, it's dog training. But
no, it's horrendous.
You see why people need to do that to a child, to keep the family together and to stop everything going to pieces and be able to handle the situation with the child, not to destroy themselves and everybody else. And people, oh, how dare you say that? You know, the community would. Apparently, I got removed from autistic social groups, and I didn't know. Because I made a sort of balanced statement about ABA. It's the only thing like it going. You know, it's either save the limb or cut it off. And ABA is cutting it off, you know. But you save the body. It's that horrible. And I didn't know. It was Emma Delmain told me that I've been removed from these groups. And of course, I didn't know. I think it happened years ago, but I didn't notice, you know, because, I don't know, that little significance to me, really. Which is, I don't know, I'm trying to address those groups again and talk about ableism, I think.
My concern about ABA is if we're, obviously with my safeguarding hat on, because that's my special interest, with that, what we're doing to already very vulnerable young people is saying to them, you know, you must do as this adult says. Yeah. And how does that safeguard them in the event of abuse? It just doesn't. It just, you know, there's obviously the huge mountainous issues of the fact that it's just wrong anyway. Yeah. But on top of that, you're making someone incredibly vulnerable, more vulnerable. Why would you do that to any person?
Because you're trying to disarm their capacity to make their own judgments, which you believe will go wrong. Yeah. It's this tyranny of competence thing, this tyranny of maturity, the idea of people knowing what they're talking about and not knowing what they're talking about. I've known so many autistics. I keep meeting autistic people, and what happens is the judgment is too focused on the self. And in the real world, you've got to maintain a relatively, you've got to be a hermit, you've got to be in a safe space, in a safe village. And of course, nutters like myself come and live in London, where it's like the most dangerous place, because I wanted to be a certain kind of person, and you come to where it was the high table, the big game, the cruelest people. Well, I'm not actually cruel, but you learn a sort of cruel attitude and a cruel persona, if that makes sense.
I've become very defensive, or knee-jerk defensive, because life's taught us quick. You know, you've got to defend yourself quick.
Yeah, and even a way of, it's not even it's a way of communication. You have to show to neurotypicals you know the score. You see what I mean? And part of this is a knowledge of great sort of love and great cruelty and great, it's kind of all these things balanced out. You've got to know love, cruelty and hate and compassion, and also understand when people are abusing you, and you must understand them. You must have compassion for people who, you know. So I learned to sort of absorb, really. And I have a family relationship, and what happened was many years ago now, I had a meeting with somebody and said, right, it's all about you. That's it. Me, I've just been going on about me. I've been selfish, even when I didn't think it was selfish. No, just you. And I call it the cafe conversation. And ever since then, it's got stronger and stronger, to the point where a member of my family is talking to me all the time. They feel safe with me. And all I'm doing is asking them how they are and loving them up. And I think, thank God, because I didn't know I was being so self-centered. And the way the family dynamic worked, it was like, it went from being this 4 friends who loved each other to, in the next minute it would be this arena. It would be like gladiatorial or something, and people screaming. And then you go back to everything's cool, because that was the dynamic we all had. And then we lost one of us to leukemia. I think my mum died. Then eventually my dad died.
I remember your dad passed, and I remember seeing online, and you wrote some most beautiful posts about it. I remember that.
Thank you. Yeah. Oh, what the hell? Are your parents still going, yeah?
Yeah. Well, luckily I've got quite young parents.
Yeah.
Very young parents, so they'll probably be great-great-grandparents by the time their clock's up. Most people have their kind of generation. We have like 5 generations in what people have in 2 or 3. So they're doing great. You raised a really good point about only talking about our day, only talking about our interests, only talking about us when it comes to other people, and I'm guilty of that, and I know I do it, be it by letter, pen, email, on the phone, which is rare because I don't really like the phone too much, or just in life, and it's funny, because it wasn't until I was diagnosed autistic. I can't change it. I'm trying to change it, but I always thought the more I share about myself, the more sensitive I'm being, because I'm showing trust, because I'm disclosing very sensitive things about me. And I thought the more I talk about my own situation, be it positive or negative, that's a really kind thing to do, because it means the other person doesn't need to disclose too much about themselves. Yeah. But to other people, I find if I'm like that with other autistic people, they're fine. They think it's great. But if I do that to people that aren't, or even if they don't think it's great, they tolerate it. If I'm with some people that aren't, not all, but some people that aren't autistic, they see it as being very like narcissistic maybe, or shallow, and that's really interesting, because actually I'm oversharing as a way to say, this is how much I love and trust you. I'm going to tell you everything. You don't have to tell me anything about you, because I respect your boundaries. And so it's really interesting. So if someone overshares loads to me, I see it as a great honour. Yeah. But it's interesting. Yeah. Other people don't see it that way.
No, they think you're childish. You see, it's this thing about knowing what you're talking about. You have to show a certain worldly, and they want a distance. A lot of people don't want to get involved with other people, really. They don't want that kind of relationship. And then some people are into it, and some people, they want a distance, but they're also diplomatic. So they think you appreciate that you're not like friends or anything, or you don't have a certain depth of relationship. I've been the same. I've gone through the world and able to partition off from others. And unable to relate, because I was terrified all the time anyway, whilst looking for a phase of my life, quite terrifying to other people. And then I got into the Buddhist movement, and I was just brilliant. I could relate to people. So I was knocking on doors for Amnesty International and getting on brilliantly with people. I was having a right laugh with people. I was very, very good at it. But again, you just go from technique to technique, and you wonder where the sincerity is. Yeah, and then we find that we're autistic. We have the advocacy. We can meet other autistics, and we can give the game away. And I mean, I used to finish Stealth Aspies shows telling the audience that I can't write a monologue about myself, and because I'm still in the closet, and I'm standing on the stage in front of these houses, and I can't tell you all the truth. I just can't do it, Yeah. God, people burned out, in the end. All that cast, they all burned out. They're all brave people. They kind of did themselves in, left me standing. And it's actually an incredibly hard thing to do, that show.
Yeah, it's a brilliant show.
They were very brave people. They really were, And I just wish you could get it all together again. But I think that they're not going to be able to get the original team together because of what it did to them, really.
This is the thing, we do burn out, don't we? And we kind of give our all. Yeah. And our want of perfection mixed in a petri dish of anxiety and extreme fear of failure means when we do something, we do it 100 miles an hour with blinkers on, but it's not sustainable, is it, to do every project 100 miles an hour, and we burn out.
Well, it's the body. It's this thing about, I asked my doctor about medication for ADHD. And this doctor was, there's a number of doctors in the practice, and I haven't met this woman before, and she was really cool. And she said, well, you know that's methamphetamine, don't you? And like, what?
At which point you signed up.
I'm like, yeah, baby. Well, my wife's a chemistry teacher, so I'm basically married to Walter White. So I can just go and ask her, get some crystal going. We could have a cottage industry. Oh, but I said, no, I'm not doing that. I'm just keeping fit. I'm doing what I've always done, which is fly around in my body.
Have you got ADHD as well, Paul?
I kind of am ADHD. Before I got into my 50s, more energy I got, happier I was, more energy. And so I tend to think clearly the faster I go. But then I got into my 50s, now I'm 57. I'm like a normal autistic person where things get on top of me. And they get overwhelmed. It never used to be like that. It was just the energy thing of flying around. For me, when I say autism, it's an umbrella term. And it's kind of like a mixing desk of different levels of ADHD, OCD, dyspraxia, dyslexia, sensitivity. But for other people, you get, I'm not autistic, I'm dyspraxic with dyslexia and some ADHD, which I think is not accurate, because I think that's the tip of the iceberg.
Yeah, absolutely.
You don't know how much is masking, coping, maturity, intelligence, personality. Yeah, we'll never know. Because people like ourselves grew up on the end of a gun. That's it. You shape up. You dance. Okay?
Yeah.
You do the job. You wake up in the morning, or a baby wakes you up. Right, yeah. Because I'm still able to keep my edge up now, despite this life I'm living, which is like paradise, because Elizabeth's got type 1 diabetes. So you don't know when she's going to keel over. I mean, we were on a DLR train the other day, and she started having a hypo. And I had to get her off, get her on the right train at the station, and continue to give her glucose. And we were lucky that one she came up, but she could have actually hit the deck, dragging her off, getting the ambulance crew on, delaying the train. Stuff like that. It's quite normal. We know all the hospitals everywhere. We have a supply of these special glucogen hyperstop syringes that they have in the ambulances, and they didn't have them in Paris. We had a hypo.
Did they not?
No, we had a hypo in a pizza restaurant in Paris in 2009, and the ambulance crew didn't have gear like that at all.
We're very lucky, aren't we?
They had to get jam from next door and try and feed it to her and take her to the hospital and give her a drip there. Yeah,
that was really kind of like Paris cliche. Then we had to go to the croissant shop and get all the jam.
Yeah. And I thought my wife was priceless, but it turned out she's only worth about €53. Because we have
the jam?
No, paying for the hospital and getting it back on the travel insurance. But it turned out she was only worth €53. I thought I could have got a load of wives. Didn't realise that's how much we paid to get my wife out of the hospital. I thought she's really? Oh heavens! That's what it cost.
Bargain.
Yeah, bargain. Shouldn't say that, really, should I? God. So, what does your future? You got an MBE. You got an MBE, didn't you?
Your mother. That's crazy, isn't it?
Mother, yeah. You met Princess Anne.
You know what it stands for, don't you?
Member of the British Empire.
Must be early.
Oh.
I hate being late.
Good.
So that's the inside joke with my colleagues, that it must be early. I'm always early. I'm like 2-3 hours early. I once went to a conference where I was speaking at 10 o'clock that morning, and I turned up at 4 o'clock in the afternoon the day before.
Yeah.
Take over, obviously. I wasn't just waiting there with my microphone.
You just couldn't help it. It's anxiety, and it's also just being on time, isn't it? Because you can't.
I hate being late.
You can't see
one of my
the
big
anxiety.
phobias.
Do you do a lot of things to be aware of the anxiety? Have you got exercises and sort of little disciplines you go and stuff you do to be aware of it?
I walk a lot. I walk about 4 hours a day.
Yeah.
Hence why I've lost a couple of stone in lockdown. And I guess that's my meditation, the way I do it with the dog.
Yeah.
And so a border collie, you have to walk 4 hours a day anyway. 2 hours in the morning, hours in the evening. Otherwise, you've got a very upset dog.
I used to do about 2 hours, an hour to 2 hours walking on my own a day. I remember you'd have to do it before you went to bed, and sometimes I had a job as a messenger for a year once, which was great. Running around, spend your lunch break walking around as well. Now I'm like, I'm going to get out of the granddad, the sofa, you see, the sofa of glory. And I can't get up. I'm like, my leg, yeah.
Me back.
But all these things from living a vigorous life,
Yeah.
So I go to the gym, go swimming, I don't want to do it.
Are you a good swimmer?
Yeah, I've been practicing a lot. My dad taught me. He missed his opportunity there. Shouldn't have taught me to swim. But I do a lot. I practice me diving. I always get to do this one dive when I start. Do you go swimming?
Oh, wow. I can't swim.
Oh, you should.
Can't ride a bike.
Yeah?
Yeah, I didn't know I had dyspraxia until I was diagnosed, and there was a few dyspraxic, highlights, I guess, on there. Really. I'm very good at dancing as long as it's to my own beat.
Yeah.
Put some music. I'm the happiest person in the room. I'm having a great time. It might not be in time to the music. It's like abstract.
Right. So I was like that myself. Yeah, you go off on your own energy. You
Yeah.
get this experience. Because we can do, you notice you can develop a joy or a buzz when you're autistic.
What, with dancing or just in general?
With dancing and with certain activities and doing some things you love, you get into this stone state. You get this euphoria. It's really good, yeah.
I do like a bit of dancing. I've been dancing with the dog. So, yeah, we do this thing. All right, don't laugh.
No.
You can laugh.
No.
Because it's funny.
Seriously?
Doggy dancing.
Doggy dancing.
Which consists of me having maybe an old tea towel, a duster or something. So I'll start dancing. Dog attaches to the other end of the duster. We're dancing away. And anyway, we keep dancing for some reason on my Spotify playlist. Billy Elliot, Electricity. Yeah. Beautiful song. And now every time that song comes on, the dog starts dancing. Like, and obviously he's a service dog, so I'm really worried about if I ever take him to watch Billy Elliot.
Oh, my goodness.
The minute Electricity comes on, he's just going to start dancing in the house.
You might get away with it. You've got to find the rights, because they sell tickets for all that, and all these venues. Where's Billy Elliot on?
Don't know, actually.
And I probably know the venue. I've probably been in there, seen something. You've got to get the right place. If you can get it in the stalls, the cast might love it. If you can get it in the stalls in the middle, and you're on an aisle seat with the doggy, is it your dog?
It's my daughter's assistant's dog. I've been training him, and I borrow him sometimes, not all the time. But I do all the walking and training. Yeah.
You got to get the cast tipped off. This is going to happen. That would really help. There's a dog dancing, and they work it in the act. You say. It's
it may go viral on YouTube or whatever, or TikTok or whatever on these days.
It would help the performance. It's really good publicity. Doggy dances in show. A dog was there, started dancing, and you'd be on talking about he always dances to Electricity with Electricity at home. You say,
he's got a routine.
Yeah. Carly,
got a routine to it.
It's been brilliant talking to you. I've got to give you a rest. We could go on and on and on. This has been very moving. I'm so glad we had this conversation.
Oh, me too, Paul. I don't know if I said anything that could be of any use to anyone, but it's nice, isn't it, just to have a chat with no expectations of it.
None whatsoever. That's what I'm trying to do, just talk to other autistic people just as people. It's all this business about, tell me about your OCD, and it's like, God's sake, round and round and round. We go, all right, you're autistic, but who are you? Really,
what do you, That's really good, actually, because a lot of the time it can just feel like training rather than let's just have a chat about each other beyond our work hats.
Okay, I'm gonna leave it there, but thank you so much.
It's nice to see you, Paul. Take care of yourself.
And much love to the family. I hope we'll meet again.
We will. We shall.
Cheers. Bye-bye.
Bye.